Hello, and welcome to our first episode. The mountains have always been here, older than the rivers, older than the towns that hide in their shadows. They stretch from Georgia to Maine, crossing time the way fog drifts through the valleys. Inside that fog, stories are born. Some whispered around campfires, some printed in old forgotten papers, and most never told at all. Yet they happened in these woods, along these trails, beneath the same stars that still hang over us tonight. This is where legends breathe, where truth and fear blend until you can't tell one from the other. Tonight, you'll hear 10 of them, real stories from the Appalachian Mountains, stories that begin in daylight and end where the trail runs out. So get comfortable, let the dark take its time, and listen.
Story 1: The Mothman. Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a quiet town along the Ohio River, where the nights are long and the mist carries the scent of water and rusted steel. In the fall of 1966, something began to stir there, something the locals would later call the Thing with Wings. It haunted the abandoned TNT area, a maze of concrete domes and broken roads left behind from World War II. Buried deep within the trees, where even the wind seemed to hesitate. One November night, two young couples were driving through those back roads. The headlights of their car swept across the tree line, and for a moment, the fog seemed to move against the light. Then, something stepped out. It was tall, over 7 feet, with its wings folded tight against its back. Its eyes glowed red, not like a reflection, but like coals that burned on their own. The driver froze, the tires skidded, and panic took over. The creature opened its wings and rose into the air, following them silently as they sped away, gliding just above the roof of the car, a shadow that kept pace no matter how fast they went. By morning, the story had reached every diner, every church pew, every street corner in town. Some laughed it off, others swore they'd seen it too. Within days, more reports followed. A gravedigger claimed he'd seen a dark shape lift from the treetops and vanish into the sky. A woman said she woke up to find 2 red eyes staring at her through the window. A farmer's dog went missing near the old power plant, and the next day, they found its leash snapped clean in half.
Police filed reports. The local paper gave the creature a name, the Mothman. And with every passing week, the stories multiplied. Always near the river, always right before something went wrong. Then came December of 1967. The Silver Bridge, the pride of Point Pleasant, was packed with cars that evening, stretching across the Ohio River, gleaming under the cold winter sky. Without warning, the structure gave way. Metal screamed, cables snapped, and in less than a minute, 46 people were gone, swallowed by the freezing water below. The investigation blamed a single failed bolt, but in the hearts of those who lived there, the truth felt heavier. People said they'd seen red eyes above the bridge the night before it fell. Some swore they saw the creature standing on the truss, motionless, as if it already knew what was coming.
After the tragedy, the sightings stopped. The fear, however, did not. Point Pleasant would never be the same again. Even now, decades later, there are those who refuse to cross the river at night. They say that when the fog is thick enough and the water still, you can sometimes see two faint red lights reflected just above the surface, as if something is still waiting beneath, watching, listening. To some, the Mothman was a curse. To others, a warning, a silent guardian trying to tell them that something terrible was near. Nobody knows for sure what it was or why it came, but everyone remembers the eyes. 2 points of burning red in the mist, watching from the darkness, waiting for the next sound of breaking metal. The river still flows, the bridge has been rebuilt, and life goes on in Point Pleasant. But when the nights grow quiet and the fog drifts low across the Ohio, people still lower their voices. They still look over their shoulders. Because once you've seen eyes like that in the dark, you never really stop wondering when you'll see them again.
Story 2: Lost on the Trail. Maine. High in the northern stretch of the Appalachian Mountains, where fog clings to the ground like breath, and the forest swallows sound until even your heartbeat feels too loud. It's a place of silence and slow weather, where the trail is both compass and confessional, and where a single step in the wrong direction can feel like stepping into another world entirely. Her name was Martha Avery, though on the trail she was known by another, Inchworm. A name she'd earned for her careful, deliberate steps, the way she moved slow but steady, never in a rush, always forward. She was nearing the end of her long through hike, over 2,000 miles from Georgia to Maine. Months of solitude broken only by the rhythm of her boots and the sound of wind pushing through trees older than history itself. That morning, the fog hung low and pale, the kind that makes the forest seem like it's holding its breath. Martha packed up her small camp, checked her compass, and left the trail just after sunrise. She signed her name in the trail register, Inchworm, south to north, and disappeared into the gray.
Sometime past noon, she stepped off the path for what must have been a moment of privacy, just a few steps down a slope, a simple detour. But when she turned back, the trail was gone. The trees all looked the same, the fog had shifted, and the faint groove of dirt that marked her path had vanished beneath her boots. She called out, waited. Nothing. The forest answered only with its own silence. She began to walk in widening circles, retracing, searching. The compass spun strangely, its needle trembling without direction. The daylight thinned, and the air grew colder. Somewhere above, a raven called once, and then the woods fell still again. Days passed. Search teams combed the area. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers shouting her name. Martha, Inchworm, can you hear us? But the forest held its secrets. Deep inside those endless pines, Martha built a small camp. She rationed her food, marked her days in her notebook, and wrote messages in case someone found her before she ran out of time. Please tell my family. I love them. I'm sorry.
She wrote until her handwriting weakened, until the lines slanted and the ink thinned. She survived for weeks, long enough to watch the moon change, long enough to hear helicopters pass overhead and fade again into nothing. She was less than a mile from the Maine search line, close enough that, on a quiet day, she might have heard the voices calling her name, too close and too far at the same time. 2 years later, hunters found what was left of her campsite. Her tent still stood, her belongings neatly placed, her final entries preserved in a bag. The investigators said she had done everything right, stayed put, conserved her strength, waited, but the forest had other rules. Even now, hikers who pass through that same stretch of trail sometimes stop suddenly, feeling something watching from the fog. Some say they hear footsteps behind them, small and careful, pacing just out of sight. Others hear a woman's voice, faint and patient, asking which way the trail runs. And when they turn, there's only mist and the soft echo of their own breathing. The mountain never gave her back completely. It just let her story drift between the trees, a warning whispered under the wind. In these woods, you don't lose the trail loses you.
Story 3: The Hollow Lights. North Carolina, near Brown Mountain. A stretch of ridgeline that, on clear nights, glows with something unexplainable. Locals call them the ghost lights. Strange orbs that drift across the slopes like lanterns held by invisible hands. The first accounts go back centuries. Old letters and newspaper clippings tell of travelers who stopped and stared at floating lights. White, blue, and gold, hovering above the tree line, bright as fire, yet silent as fog. Some thought they were spirits of the lost. Others said they were the souls of miners still carrying their lamps through tunnels that no longer exist. Whatever they are, they always return.
One summer evening, a truck driver pulled over on Highway 181 when a light appeared in the forest beside him. At first, he thought it was a motorcycle headlight, but it moved too smoothly, gliding between the trees, matching his speed as he drove. For nearly a mile, it followed him, never falling back, never closing in, until it rose straight into the air and disappeared without a sound. Another night, a group of hikers camped near the overlook saw 3 lights rise from the valley below. They floated together for a while, weaving slowly, almost dancing. Then, as if making a decision, one of them broke away and began to move toward the ridge. The hikers ran, tripping over roots and gear, the light keeping pace until they reached the road. When they looked back, the mountain was dark again. Scientists have come and gone, carrying instruments, theories, and cameras. Some talk about gases, refractions, or distant headlights bending through layers of air. But the locals don't need explanations. They've seen the lights enough to know that they don't behave like anything human. They come and go as they please, answering to no pattern anyone can track.
Old-timers say the lights show up before disaster. A rock slide, a flood, a death in the valley. Others say they are the disaster, born from something trapped long ago beneath the mountain. Hunters have seen them hovering above the old mines, drifting slowly as if looking for something they lost. And sometimes, when the fog moves in just right, the lights gather again. They hover above the ridges, pulse once, and fade. In that moment, the forest goes perfectly still. No insects, no wind, no sound at all. It's like the mountain itself is listening, remembering. The brown mountain lights have been studied, feared, and chased for over 200 years, but no one's ever caught them. No one ever will, because they don't belong to us. They belong to the mountain and whatever it's keeping quiet.
Story 4: Vanished in the Woods. The Smoky Mountains, a range where clouds crawl low across the ridges and the air smells of rain and pine. It's the kind of wilderness that feels alive, old, restless, and aware of every step that enters it. People who hike there long enough start to understand that the forest doesn't always want to be understood. Sometimes it wants to be left alone. Locals still whisper about the Melton Ridge disappearances, 3 hikers who vanished years apart along the same lonely section of trail. The cases share no witnesses, no footprints, no answers. Just a single truth that no one wants to say out loud: that the woods remember. The first to go missing was Eleanor Hayes, a Sunday school volunteer in her 50s who spent every weekend hiking the trails around Deep Creek. She was steady, cautious, and kind, known for carrying extra food to share with strangers she met on the path. Her friends said that on that day, the sun was bright and the trail was clear. They stopped for water, and Eleanor walked ahead, just around a bend lined with rhododendron. When they called her name a minute later, she didn't answer. They searched, thinking she'd stepped off the path for a photo or to tie her boot, but she was gone. The park rangers scoured the area for days. Helicopters circled. Volunteers combed every ridge. No sign of her was ever found. No prints, no torn fabric, not even a snapped twig. It was as if the forest had simply taken her back. 2 years later, a young ranger named Clay Morrison was assigned to a missing persons search, Eleanor's case. He knew those woods better than anyone. It was his first week leading a team, and he promised her family he'd bring closure. One afternoon, as he descended into the same hollow where she'd vanished, his radio crackled. Static filled the channel. Then a faint voice, not from his team, not from dispatch, whispering his name. His partner said Clay froze, staring into the trees like he was listening to something distant. Then, without a word, he dropped his gear and walked into the fog. They never found him. After that, the rangers avoided that part of the ridge when they could. But 5 years later, it happened again. This time, it was a student. Ruth Carter, a geology major from Knoxville, who'd come to the Smokies alone for research. She pitched her tent near Melton Ridge one cool October evening, right before the rain came in. In the morning, her campsite was still there, tent zipped, backpack leaning against a tree, coffee cup half full. But Ruth was gone.
Search teams combed the ridge for 2 weeks. Dogs lost her scent at the mouth of a small cave, a narrow slit in the limestone, barely big enough to crawl through. One rescuer swore he heard faint voices coming from inside, like an echo that didn't belong to them. When he leaned closer, the air rushing from the opening turned cold enough to fog his breath. The sound stopped. They went inside. The cave was empty. Locals say that Melton Ridge isn't haunted, it's hungry. They say the forest doesn't just take people, it keeps them. That it waits until the fog is thick enough and the trail goes quiet, and then it opens a place that wasn't there before. A cave, a bend, a hollow, a doorway back into itself. Even now, hikers claim that if you walk that trail alone, you'll feel it. The air shifts, the forest seems to tilt, and for a heartbeat, the path behind you looks unfamiliar. Some say they've heard their own names whispered just behind their shoulder, soft and patient. Others hear footsteps pacing alongside theirs, matching perfectly, until they stop and realize they're alone again. If you ever find yourself on the Deep Creek Trail and the woods fall completely silent, no birds, no wind, nothing, don't call out. Don't turn around. Just keep walking and hope the forest decides to let you leave.
Story 5. The Ghost of Tate Hall. Banner Elk, North Carolina. The town sits quiet beneath the Blue Ridge, its streets lined with old trees and red brick buildings that whisper of history. At the edge of the Lees-McRae College campus stands a structure that has outlived nearly everyone who's entered it, Tate Hall. To most, it's just another building. To those who stay late enough to hear the halls breathe, it's something else entirely. Long before it became a college dormitory, Tate Hall was a hospital. In the 1930s, Banner Elk was smaller, colder, and often cut off by snow. The winters came early, the roads froze, and sickness spread fast through the valley. The hospital was the only refuge for miles. Inside those walls worked Emily Ward, a nurse remembered for her gentleness, her tireless care, and her refusal to leave a patient alone through the night. When tuberculosis swept through the region one winter, the hospital overflowed. Beds lined the hallways, the air thick with the sound of coughing and prayer. Emily worked until she collapsed. Within weeks, she too became a patient. The disease had found her. She died in room 212 before the snow melted that spring. The hospital closed years later, and the building was absorbed into the college. But Tate Hall never forgot her.
Students who study late into the night tell stories of footsteps echoing in the stairwell after everyone has gone home. Doors creak open on their own. The elevator stops on the second floor.
always the second floor, even when no one has pressed the button. Sometimes, when the wind outside is still, they say you can hear a piano note echo faintly through the hall, a single sound that lingers longer than it should. One janitor swore he saw her. It was just after midnight, the hall empty and quiet. He turned the corner and froze. At the far end stood a woman in a nurse's uniform from another era, her face pale but calm, her posture kind, her eyes steady. She didn't move toward him, didn't speak. She just smiled, a soft, tired smile, before she stepped forward and disappeared straight through the wall. Every winter, when the air grows sharp, someone finds a vase of fresh flowers on the windowsill of room 212. Always the same kind, white lilies, slightly wilted, as if left by a hand that no longer trembles. No one knows who places them there. No one's ever been seen doing it. They call her the nurse of Tate Hall, and even the skeptics speak her name quietly. Because once you've been alone in that building at night and felt the air shift, once you've heard that faint piano note echo from an empty room, you understand something most people never do, that kindness doesn't die with the body. It lingers like a song that refuses to end. Story 6: The Man in the Mine. Welch, West Virginia, a place tucked deep in coal country, where the hills seem to hum when the wind moves through them, like the earth itself is breathing. People here say that the mines never really go silent, that even when they're sealed and forgotten, something still stirs beneath the ground. The locals don't talk about ghosts. They talk about echoes, things that keep working long after the shift is over. In 1983, a miner named Dale Patterson worked the number 9 shaft, a narrow, twisting network of tunnels carved deep into the mountain outside town. He wasn't the superstitious type, a quiet man, father of 2, known for showing up early and leaving last. The kind of man who believed that darkness was just part of the job. But that belief didn't last forever. The morning he vanished had begun like any other, with the smell of oil, dust, and wet stone. The night before, the crew had felt something unusual, a tremor that shook the lantern hooks and made the ground shiver like a living thing. Dale brushed it off, said it was just the mountains settling. By noon, though, the air in the tunnels felt wrong, too still, too warm, heavy with pressure that made your ears ache.
Then came the sound. 3 slow knocks, echoing through the rock. Distant at first, but deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. The crew froze. When the foreman called down, expecting to hear laughter, the only reply was more knocking, rhythmic, like a code no one could read. They followed the sound to Dale's section, nearly half a mile into the shaft. His helmet was there, the lamp still burning, his pick resting against the wall. But Dale was gone. The search went on for days. They dug through collapsed passages, crawled into flooded corridors where the air felt too thin to breathe. On the fourth day, a rescuer found Dale's headlamp lying in the dirt, still glowing, even though it should have burned out long ago. The inspector said it was impossible. The fuel was gone, yet the light remained. After they sealed off the lower tunnels, the mine reopened. But the men said something had changed. The knocking came back, always in threes, always from deep inside the shaft that had been closed. Some nights they heard faint voices under the hum of machinery, words too muffled to make sense. A few claimed they saw a figure at the edge of their light, not walking, not floating,
Just present.
By 1989, the mine shut down for good. The last man to lock the gate was the foreman, Bill Harper. He told his wife later that as he turned the key, he heard a voice behind him, calm, low, and familiar. "You're clear to go," it said. When he turned around, there was only the dark mouth of the tunnel, breathing cold air. Now the mine sits behind a rusted fence, the entrance half collapsed and swallowed by weeds. Teenagers sneak up there at night, daring each other to knock on the steel door. They say if you're quiet enough, you'll hear it answer. 3 knocks, then silence, then 3 more. Some say it's Dale Patterson, still working, still checking the beams. Others believe it's something older, something that lives in the heart of the mountain, imitating the sounds it's heard. A warning, maybe, or a reminder that the earth doesn't forget the ones who dig too deep. Even now, when the wind cuts through the valley and the night settles heavy over Welch, you can hear it if you listen close, a hollow rhythm under the ground, like a heartbeat buried in stone. Story 7: The Road That Never Ends. Franklin County, Virginia. A quiet stretch of farmland and forest, broken by a narrow, twisting road the locals call Old Briar Hollow. On the map, it's just Route 27, a thin gray line that winds through the hills before vanishing into fog. But if you ask around in town, someone will tell you not to drive it after midnight. Not because of crime, but because sometimes the road doesn't end. The first man to say so was Tom Burley, a truck driver who'd spent 30 years hauling lumber through the Appalachians. One foggy night in 1973, he turned onto Route 27 for what should have been a short drive to the mill. The trees pressed close to the asphalt, their branches leaning over like ribs, and the air had that dense, wet quiet that makes you feel cut off from the world. After half an hour, Tom noticed something strange. The same mile marker passing by again, then the same fallen tree, then the same sharp turn. He was looping, though the road was straight. He checked his compass. The needle spun without direction. The truck radio crackled with static, and the headlights illuminated nothing but mist.
Finally, he stopped the engine. The silence that followed was absolute. When he looked behind him, the road was gone, just fog stretching endlessly in both directions.
He turned around and drove back the way he came, or thought he did. But the landmarks had changed. The turns didn't lead where they should have. The road seemed to rearrange itself. By dawn, he found himself back at the same intersection where he'd started, exhausted and trembling, as if the night had folded itself into his memory and left something missing. His report was dismissed as fatigue, but the stories spread, and over the years others came forward. Drivers described seeing figures on the roadside, people who looked solid one moment and translucent the next. One said he slowed for a man waving a flashlight. The man smiled as he passed, but his eyes never moved, stuck staring straight ahead, glassy and wrong. When the driver checked his mirror, there was no one there. In 1994, State Trooper Ed Mills decided to test the stories himself. He was a practical man, the kind who believed in evidence, not superstition. He started his patrol car just before midnight, set his dash camera running, and drove the full length of Route 27. 3 hours later, dispatch lost contact. He returned to the station just after dawn, pale and shaken. His car had half a tank of gas left, but the odometer read 118 miles on a road that's only 12 long. When they reviewed the dash cam, the footage showed the same stretch of road looping again and again, seamless and endless. Then, at the 2-hour mark, something appeared. A figure standing by the roadside, tall, still, wearing a state trooper's uniform. Mills leaned closer to the screen and froze. The man on the video was him. He never patrolled that route again.
In 2007, a road maintenance crew was sent to repaint the lane lines near Briar Hollow. They worked all day and left their tools overnight. When they returned the next morning, every can of paint was dry, brushes gone. They found them miles away, laid neatly in a row beside the same mile marker mentioned in the reports, still dripping wet. After that, the state stopped maintaining that section altogether. The asphalt cracked, the trees crept inward, and nature started reclaiming what was hers. But people still end up there. GPS loses signal. The air grows thick and silent. The headlights catch a sign that shouldn't exist anymore. Old Briar Hollow Road. Locals say that the road isn't cursed, it's trapped, like a film stuck in a loop, replaying the same night forever. And those who drive it long enough become part of it, another shadow waiting in the fog, waving down the next car that comes through. So if you ever find yourself driving through Franklin County on a quiet night and see that name on a rusted sign, don't stop, don't slow down, just keep your eyes on the road and hope it ends where it's supposed to. Because some roads, once you turn onto them, never really let you go.
Story 8. The Lake That Took Them. Fontana Lake, North Carolina. It looks peaceful from above, a glassy surface reflecting the Smoky Mountains like a painting that never moves. But beneath that stillness lies something older, another world, drowned but not forgotten. Before the dam was built in the 1940s, this valley was home to a small town called Judson. It had farms, a church, a post office, a handful of dirt roads. Families lived there for generations. Then the government came, needing the land for a reservoir. They gave the townspeople 2 weeks to leave. Most packed their lives into trucks and wagons, but a few refused to go, too stubborn, too attached to the soil their fathers had plowed. When the floodgates opened, the valley filled quickly. The last roofs vanished under green water before sunset. For years, Fontana Lake became a place of beauty, deep and calm, surrounded by trails and mist. But anyone who spends enough time there ends up hearing the same stories. Divers who've gone too deep say they've seen things that don't belong underwater. Fences, chimneys, even gravestones still standing where the town used to be. Some claim to have seen lights beneath the surface, faint and shifting, like windows still glowing in houses that shouldn't exist anymore.
In 1975, a diver named Rick Taylor was sent with 2 others to inspect the dam's lower intake tunnels. He descended with a flashlight, his breathing steady, bubbles rising in the dark. But when he came back up, he was shaking. He said he'd seen a light below him, not a reflection, not another diver's lamp, but a warm glow, like a porch light shining through water. He followed it down, and there it was, the shape of a house, a front porch, a window, and behind that window, something moved. A shadow crossed the light, slow and deliberate. That same night, campers along the shore reported seeing lines of light drifting under the lake, weaving like streets, turning corners that no longer exist. The park rangers called it phosphorescent algae. The locals called it the drowned town. In the years since, more stories have surfaced. Fishermen have heard bells tolling beneath the water, faint, metallic, far too deep to be an echo. One man swore he saw the steeple of a church rise through the fog before sinking again. And once, during a drought, the water level dropped low enough to expose what was left of Main Street. Asphalt cracked, but still visible, yellow lines showing through the moss.
In 2003, a film crew tried to capture footage of the ruins. Their underwater cameras caught the remains of houses, cars, and fences perfectly preserved in the stillness. But in one clip, something moved, a shape gliding slowly between rooftops. The light caught it for a second, then it was gone. The diver who filmed it said he heard footsteps through his headset, slow, heavy, above him. To this day, no one has explained the light that sometimes flickers under Fontana Lake when the moon is high. Scientists talk about trapped gases or reflections. Locals say it's the porch light of a house that never went out, still burning underwater for the ones who never left. When the wind changes, the air above the lake smells faintly of smoke. And if you stand very still, just before dawn, when the fog drifts across the surface, you might hear it, a single church bell ringing from deep below, tolling for a town that refused to die. Story 9. The Woman by the Tracks. South of Asheville, North Carolina, the old rail line runs through a narrow valley where fog rolls in every evening and doesn't leave until morning. The trains stopped decades ago, but locals say that if you drive along the highway that parallels the tracks after midnight, you might still see the lantern. She's known as the Woman by the Tracks, always walking, always carrying that single light. Her story goes back to 1962, when a freight train derailed near Blackwood Bridge. The engineer, Robert Hale, was an old hand, 20 years on the line, steady and careful. That night, something went wrong. According to the brakeman, just before the crash, a woman appeared on the tracks waving a lantern. He shouted for the engineer to brake, but it was too late. The engine jumped the rails, the cars twisted, and Hale was killed instantly. The official report called it a signal failure, but everyone on that train swore they saw her. 2 weeks later, a farmer walking the ridge above the bridge said he saw a woman on the tracks holding a lantern. She stopped at the crash site, set the light down, and vanished into the fog. When he went to look, he found fresh footprints in the gravel and a single red ribbon tied to the lantern's handle. Since then, people have seen her again and again. Sometimes she walks. Sometimes she stands perfectly still, staring down the line, as if waiting for something that's late to arrive. Some hear her calling softly into the dark, "Robert, Robert," the same gentle voice, always near the bridge. In 1989, a photographer from the Asheville Citizen-Times spent 3 nights near those tracks, hoping to capture the ghost on film. He never saw her in person, but when the negatives were developed, one photo showed her clearly, a pale woman holding a lantern behind him, her face turned toward the camera. She wasn't there when he took the shot. Experts examined the film. No double exposure, no tampering. The photo sits locked in the newspaper archives now. Every Halloween, someone new asks to see it, and each time they say the same thing. When you look long enough, the lantern's glow seems to flicker. Even today, flowers are left by the marker where the train derailed. They say it's for Robert Hale and for the woman who never stopped searching for him. On cold nights, when the fog thickens and the valley holds its breath, truckers driving that stretch sometimes see a faint light in their mirrors, a lantern swaying slowly in the dark. If you see it, don't stop, don't follow, just keep driving, because no one who's tried to catch up to that light has ever found their way back. Story 10. The Last Cabin. Eastern Kentucky. The Red River Gorge stretches there, a maze of cliffs, fog, and silence where sound seems to fold in on itself. Locals say the air in those woods carries memories. You can hear voices that aren't really there, footsteps that don't belong to anyone. That's where Paul Kinney, a forest ranger, worked for 15 years. He wasn't a man easily shaken. He'd spent most of his life outdoors, comfortable with the stillness, the storms, and the strange noises that come with both. But in the fall of 1997, something in that forest changed him. He was out marking fire lines late one afternoon when the light began to fade faster than usual. The forest turned to copper and gray. That's when he saw it, a cabin tucked between the trees, smoke curling from its chimney, windows glowing faintly. He didn't recognize it, and it wasn't on any of his maps. He called it in on his radio. Static. Tried again. Nothing. So he walked closer. The air felt heavy, thick with the smell of wood smoke and rain. No footprints, no path leading in or out. The cabin looked old but untouched, like it had been waiting.
He knocked once. No answer. He looked through a window. Inside, a fire burned in the hearth, but there were no logs, just a heap of black ash, glowing like embers that refused to die. Then came the sound. Footsteps from inside, slow and deliberate. But when he looked again, the room was empty. He turned to leave, heart pounding. The radio crackled once, faintly, and a voice came through. Not his dispatchers, not anyone he knew. It said, "Don't turn around." The next thing he remembered was standing beside his truck. The forest was silent. Behind him, where the cabin had been, there was nothing but trees. When he checked his coordinates later, they pointed to an area that had burned down in 1924, a logging camp that no longer existed. The Appalachian Mountains hold more than trees and trails. They hold memories. They keep what we forget. From West Virginia to North Carolina, from Tennessee to Maine, the stories change, but the feeling never does. It's the silence, the deep and endless kind that isn't empty, but full of watching. It's the darkness that feels older than itself. Maybe that's what draws us here. The idea that somewhere in these hills, you're never truly alone. Not while the wind moves through the pines. Not while the mountains remember your name. This was Whispers After Midnight, where the dark speaks and we whisper. Sleep well, if you can.